I was in residency, I went to work in the urgent care clinic, which I loved. And right before I started, we all got an email that said, effective immediately, all residents must come to morning huddle for clinic. And that's like at 8:15. Every other resident was coming in at 9, but because I was there, I had to come in at 8:15. I said, no problem, no shade, I will be there. I show up at 8:15 in the morning, and no other resident is there except for me and the program director. And we listen into morning huddle, the clinic stuff, and then they start talking about urgent care. Not just talking about urgent care, they start throwing urgent care under the bus. They start saying, why is urgent care inefficient? Why can't we get the patients out before 5 p.m.? Why this, why that? Why are the nurses? And they start coming for the nurses. And they finish everything, and then they say, does anyone have any questions? And I look around, and no one has any questions. And they're about to say, okay, we're dismissed. And I said, you know what? Pop one of these up. I said, over here. And everyone's like, oh, Peter has a question. Yes, hi. Hi, everyone, I'm Peter. Those of you who don't know me, I've been working in urgent care. I just wanted to say that the nurses in the urgent care have been working really hard, and part of the reason why we can't get patients out by 5 p.m. is two things. One, the nurses are floating between the urgent care clinic and the regular clinic, and they're not scheduled to one place, so they're working actually very hard. And the second reason is because we are not sure what is the last acceptable time that we will accept a walk-in for urgent care. And then the clinic director said, oh, it's very easy, it's 3 o'clock. I said, oh, very interesting. That's not the case. And she said, what? And so we go around the room, and the nurses have a different time than the clinic director, than the front desk, and the receptionist, and everyone is on a different time of when we'll accept the last walk-in patient for urgent care. And they're all arguing, and I said, guys, can we just make a final rule since we're all here and we're communicating? What is the final time that we'll accept a walk-in? And the clinic director said 3:30. I said 3:30, and everyone said 3:30. I said, great, we're done. I wish it ended there. I go walk back to my urgent care slot. While I'm walking, the nurse is like, thank you so much for standing up for us. Like, this is the change that we needed. Thank you so much for advocating. I said, this is not even advocating. This is just the truth, y'all. This is justice. I go back to my room and I sit down. As I sit down, I'm facing the wall, working, and the door's behind me to the resident room, and I hear the door close. So I turn around, and it's one of the attendings. In fact, it's the attending who's in charge of the clinic for the residents' education, and the one who messaged all of us saying that we have to come into clinic, right? The morning huddle that was never before an obligation, but because now he wants it to be, all residents have to be there. The other residents showed up late, which is totally fine, not to throw them under the bus, but he showed up late as well, and then he comes into my room to talk to me. And he said, Peter, you have a minute? And I said, yes. He said, what did you think you were doing out there? Out where? Peter, we're gonna accept patients until we go home for the day. We don't have a cutoff time for urgent care. I said, oh, but the clinic director, I know what she said. We're all addressing it. There is no cutoff time. You're here to work. I said, I'm more than happy to work. I'm just talking about what's most efficient for patients, because they end up waiting. Like, if we accept a 4:59 walk-in and we close the doors at 5, that patient's not being seen. We're all there until 7 or 8 p.m. trying to mobilize the patients we already have sitting there, and it's bad for everyone. And he said, Peter, you're here to work. I said, I understand, but he said, there's no buts. Why did you speak up? I said, they asked, does anyone have any questions? And I had a question. He said, Peter, morning huddle is not a space for residents to ask questions. If you have questions, you come talk to me. I said, so I'm not allowed to speak during morning huddle? He said, no. And I wanted to ask, then why do you want me to be there? But that was sort of the unspoken pregnant elephant in the room, pregnant pause and the elephant in the room. And I thought, why did you make me show up? You weren't even there. I advocated for not just myself, but for the patients and for the nurses and for the image of the clinic. He could have said his thoughts in the morning huddle while everyone was there. But because he didn't, what he then did was he went and individually intimidated myself, the nurses, and the people who are working urgent care to uproot. That breaks down communication. And so I saw the nurses later on in the day, and the same ones who were like, thank you so much for speaking up for me, said, thank you so much for speaking up for us. Nothing ever changes in healthcare. And if you have your own experiences, let's hear them. I'm done.